Welcome back, everyone. Now we are going to talk about the research aspect of experiential philanthropy. So welcome, panelists. Please put questions in the chat.
Hi, everybody. My name is Julie Olberding, and I'm a professor at Northern Kentucky University. I'm happy to kind of be kicking this panel off. I want to thank our panelists, to include Dr. David Campbell, Dr. Whitney McIntire Miller, and Dr. Megan Downing. We've heard a lot of experiences from individual faculty members and students, and this will be an opportunity to kind of look at other programs that are happening at other universities, as well as studies that take different perspectives and even look at programs nationally. So we all have a lot to share. In fact, I know, and maybe one or two of us kind of feel like we're going to have to squeeze a lot into the time that we have. So I am just going to launch it off to Dr. Campbell first to introduce himself. He's from Binghamton University, New York. Talk a little bit about that, and then the research that he's done in experiential philanthropy.
Thanks, Julie. And it's such a pleasure to be on a panel at Northern Kentucky University, because you all really are the leaders in this field. And many of us who work in the field of experiential philanthropy have learned from the model that Northern Kentucky has established and from lessons that you've taught us. I'm a professor of public administration at Binghamton. I do research in a variety of areas, but I've been teaching experiential philanthropy since 2009. And my involvement with these classes has really led me to sort of think about what are some of the important sort of research questions that emerge from experiential philanthropy courses, and how can I do research that will make me a better teacher, or really learn from what I've been teaching and what others are doing, so that I can really sort of improve this model. So I'm going to share my screen and share the presentation I've created for you, and talk a little bit about the research that I have done. Again, I have two things I want to sort of talk about. The first is really course models, or the settings for experiential research, which was really the first thing that I've done, and a more recent study that I've done about what are people reading in these experiential philanthropy courses. So first, the thing that sort of, I think by means of context, is just to know that I had created a program at Binghamton called the Philanthropy Incubator. And if you're curious, the link is in the slides to it. This is a screenshot from that. But the Philanthropy Incubator is really our program that we use to illustrate to students that we offer several experiential philanthropy courses. It was established in 2009. It includes both undergraduate and graduate courses, not different from Northern Kentucky insofar as they're really courses either in public administration or in a specific major, the philosophy, politics, and law major. And in that time, we've given over $200,000 in grants to the greater Binghamton community. And Binghamton University is part of the State University of New York, and we are in upstate New York. And we've supported in that time sort of more than 25 organizations, generally giving out between $10,000 and $15,000 a year in grants. I received my funding for my course from the Learning by Giving Foundation. It supported the undergraduate work at Binghamton since 2010, and for more or less since 2010, I've served as a leader on its faculty advisory board, Learning by Giving, founded by Doris Buffett. That logo is sort of a picture of her. So I'm going to talk about the two research articles that I have done related to experiential philanthropy. The first one is called Practicing Philanthropy in American Higher Education, Cultivating Engaged Citizens and Nonprofit Sector Professionals. I published that actually, 10 years ago now in the Journal of Public Affairs Education. And more recently, a year or two ago, I wrote this article, The Experiential Philanthropy Canon, What Students Read in Experiential Philanthropy Courses and Why It Matters. Those of you who are students may be interested to know that of the three authors, Matt Rosansky was a student in one of the courses, and it shows you that students can play a role in doing research on this topic. In terms of the first article, what I was interested in back in 2014, really 2013 and 2014, was sort of what is the nature of these courses. I had a sense that this field of experiential philanthropy was growing, but I couldn't put my arms around the number and sort of extent of these courses, in what kinds of settings were they landing, what were the course models, and I wanted to explore that question. One of the things that's important about it, though, is that the data were collected 2013 and 2014, and those of you who were at Northern Kentucky then would know that Northern Kentucky was part of the Pay It Forward project that was funded by the Kentucky, Ohio, and Michigan Campus Compact programs through the Corporation for National and Community Service. And that program went away, but it may have grown the number of courses. But I think some of my findings are really sort of shaped by that experience. I'm going to show you just a couple of tables from this research that capture sort of what I learned. So the first question that I wanted to know is sort of what disciplines and academic units host these courses. And there were 88 courses that I found. I reviewed syllabi. I was curious what kinds of faculty, what kinds of departments would see experiential philanthropy as appropriate. And what I found was that most of them, or a majority of them, were in undergraduate pre-professional degree programs. And that people saw experiential philanthropy as something that prepared people for careers. And those would be places like business or management departments or human services departments, and then a wide range of some others, including sort of medical professions and things like that. The others actually were in the distribution was in somewhat smaller numbers. Social science departments had only 15, sociology, economics, political science. In humanities, there were fewer: English, art, and history. And then a few of them fell into these special categories of programs within colleges and universities. An honors college or a first-year experience, or even in some civic engagement unit of the university. But the thing that sort of stands out here is that there really were predominantly in pre-professional programs and fewer in traditional arts and sciences. And then I also wanted to know, what is it that courses were trying sort of to teach? And I saw sort of 4 different kinds of models, again, some that were really about the discipline in particular, the discipline in which the course was offered, some which were a variation of nonprofit management education, and then smaller numbers that were focused either on civic engagement or first-year experience. And then within that, I asked, well, what kind of content are students being exposed to? And the most significant amount was around practical skills, grant making, and then to a lesser extent, management issues in nonprofit organizations and philanthropy, management of nonprofit organization, or managing nonprofit organizations as it applies to a specific discipline. Arts organizations, for example, or healthcare organizations in particular. So this really sort of gave me a sense of what people were trying to accomplish through these experiential philanthropy programs. More recently, I've thought about this question of what are our students reading in these courses? If the first set of the first research project I did just addressed the question, who's interested in these classes and what are their sort of course goals? I was driven more by the sense of, what are people trying to teach here? And what drove me to this question were some things I was observing in the national environment. This is an article I wrote for The Conversation based on reflections that I'd read in my class. My students see giving away money as a good thing, but they're getting leery of billionaire donors. And what I worried about is, are people just sort of seeing philanthropy as really about billionaires? Or even a new reason, this is another article I wrote for The Conversation called "A New Reason Americans Are Getting Leery of Billionaire Donors." And so I was curious, why were my students sort of getting this impression? I didn't think that I wanted them to focus on billionaires, but billionaires is sort of where their heads were at when it came to philanthropy. So I wanted to look at how courses were presenting the role that philanthropy plays in civic life, and really the perception of their giving versus sort of billionaire giving. And so what I did was I looked at 33 syllabi of courses funded by the Learning by Giving Foundation and asked what kind of content are students being introduced to? And the context for this was to say, well, do researchers see philanthropy as a good thing? Do they have an affirmative view of it? You know, the traditional sort of Andrew Carnegie role, or even a more recent reform-minded role, derived from people like Darren Walker at the Ford Foundation, Phil Buchanan from the Center for Effective Philanthropy, and Beth Breeze, the British scholar, or people sort of more critical like Anand Giridharadas, Rob Reich, and Edgar Villanueva, who are sort of really worried about whether philanthropy is really problematic. And I looked at these syllabi through that lens. One of the things that I saw is that mostly what students were getting introduced to was material that was about the nature of philanthropy writ large. So you see what they saw more than anything else were critiques of philanthropy, information about the gospel of wealth and this reform view of the gospel of wealth, some stuff on strategy, but really looking at philanthropy at the sort of macro level was what many students were being introduced to, and then some process things. Another way to sort of look at it is just to say, what were the most common readings across courses? And there are these readings that really sort of focused on the gospel of wealth, or these big questions about the nature of philanthropy, which would affect or would give students a picture that philanthropy is about billionaires or very wealthy people. Gospel of Wealth for the 21st Century, the Gospel of Wealth by Carnegie, Reich's Just Giving, Edgar Villanueva's Decolonizing Wealth. And when I looked at, I categorized content, I saw that the total number of readings by category, there were many more readings on philanthropy or nature of philanthropy and process than there were about questions of giving at the individual level. What does giving sort of mean to me? And so where that left me in the end, and I'm just about to sort of wrap up, is to say that these courses were focusing on the nature of philanthropy sort of writ large, on the role of foundations, on the role of billionaires, and these sort of normative and policy questions about what philanthropy should be. But there was much more limited focus on what does giving sort of mean to me? What's the role of individual giving in civic life? Why might I, as a regular non-billionaire person, be motivated to give? Or how students can make a difference. And so in some ways, it's unsurprising that that leaves students to say that they're sort of leery of billionaire donors. And so my takeaway is sort of this. I think that it's led me to sort of think differently about what I teach, that when I teach experiential philanthropy, I want to focus on educating students for citizenship, encourage them to reflect on the role of giving in their lives, and present classes more as giving circles, opportunities for collaborative, collective giving rather than foundations, and emphasize student agency as donors who can make a difference. One way to do that in my classes is I ask students to contribute something of $15 a semester and to a larger pot of money where students give away, or students are contributing to the amount the class gives away in something we call sort of a charity pitch. The $15 is instead of a book. And I only do 1 hour-and-a-half session all semester on foundations, the nature of big philanthropy and things like that, because I think that actually leads students to focus wrongly on, or focus on the wrong things and not on their role as people who might give. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Julie, I hope that's not too much time, and hopefully it's a reasonable start.
That was excellent. It really laid a great foundation, I think, for this panel, just to have a better understanding of what's happening across the country. I love, the suggestions about readings, and I know myself, I've looked at your article, and so I hope it motivates other faculty who are doing it already or thinking about it to take a closer look at your JPAE article. So thank you so much for that. And Dr. McIntire Miller, will shift it off to you. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Hopefully you all can see my slides here. I still need the presenter view, so you get the extra tab too, but hopefully that's okay. It is nice to see you all. Good morning from here in California, but good afternoon to those of you who are on the other side of the country. I'm calling in here today from Chapman University, which is in Southern California. We like to tell people we're really close to Disneyland because most folks kind of have a sense of where that might be. So happy to be here and to spend some time with you this morning and this afternoon. I'm going to talk to you about the Panther Experiential Philanthropy Project, which is our project here at Chapman University. So again, my name is Whitney McIntire Miller. I'm Associate Professor of Leadership Studies here in our Atala College of Educational Studies. And I am the co-director of the Panther Experiential Philanthropy Project, which we affectionately call PEP, because the Panther Experiential Philanthropy Project is a lot to say on a regular basis. I'm really happy that my co-director, Elisa Driscoll, is also on the call. She can't be here for the whole time, so I'm taking the lead here, but she's here as well. So I'm really grateful for her to be here. And really, it was her brainchild, PEP. So whenever we present, I usually make her do this part because she's the one that really put all the things together that made PEP what it is today. Some of you, I know, I was at NKU from 2010 to 2014 before joining Chapman University, where I've been for the past 10 years, which is sort of hard to believe. In the 2018-2019 school year, I had the pleasure of working with Elisa as she was completing her Master's of Leadership Development capstone project. And she was really looking to find a way to bridge her passion between giving back and philanthropy with her professional life working on a college campus. Elisa is our Vice President for Community Relations here at Chapman University. And so we had conversations about my work with Mayerson at NKU, and she did tons and tons and tons of reading about experiential philanthropy and giving and working with Gen Z students. And the first PEP project class was piloted in the spring of 2019. This was back when we were still printing those giant checks. This is from our very first class. With COVID, we went online, and then we haven't been presenting as many of those really giant checks as we'd like to, but maybe we can get back to that one day. So PEP has 6 goals. I want to tell you a little bit about this before we talk more sort of about the research side of things. The learning by giving approach, those of you familiar with the Mayerson Project, this will sound very familiar to you. The importance of meaningful community engagement, the ability to foster important transferable skills, teamwork, persuasive thinking, things that people can take from this project onto other sorts of things as well. Building your professional network, really ensuring that students can connect with the folks that they're working with in their nonprofit organizations. Developing awareness of real life social issues, really beginning to understand, and you'll see when I present a little bit of the data that we really do see those connections being made between students here in Orange County, California, and what we're seeing, what they're seeing with social issues and with nonprofits in the area. And then, of course, also building the pipeline of next gen donors as well. Our program is a baby program. So Elisa and I have 2 full-time jobs. Like I said, she's the Vice President of Community Relations. I'm a full-time faculty member, and the PEP program is run by the 2 of us doing the best we can to keep ourselves going. So we're still pretty small. We're still pretty flexible. We still engage in the indirect model of giving. We work only with classes. We have big dreams about doing time banking and lots of other sorts of things. But our capacity right now is still sort of a little bit small. But we are able to provide the $1,000 to $2,000 to classes, depending on the numbers of classes that we engage with each year and each semester. Most of our donations comes directly from our Office of Community Relations. Chapman is a private institution, and so we have an intentional giving approach that's part of the work that the university does. And so we are grateful that the Office of Community Relations sponsors much of the bulk of the work that we do. Several colleges and universities colleges and schools at the university have also funded specific individual courses. And so we get funding from smaller academic units as well. And then we also have a group of private donors that help to bring the PEP project to life. Also funding, like we've heard previously today, special interest pieces, as well as sort of large overall funding. In 2020 and 2021, we had a donor who was really interested in looking at organizations that were centering Black lives. And so we had 2 semesters where that was our focus as PEP. So because we're small, we get to be lean and flexible, which is really nice. So, so far we have had courses in 3 of our schools and colleges. Our academic home is in the Atala College of Educational Studies, which is where I am a faculty member. We have an IES 103 class, which is our sort of undergraduate teaching and learning prep program. A little bit wider information about what we could do there is our flagship course. Almost every semester, we have at least one section of the course participating, which is really great. And then we have some of these other courses coming in and out as things go through. In fact, I believe that we have 4 sections of IES 103 participating in the class this spring, which is really exciting. So it's become something, a little bit of a spoken word that people know that if you're taking IES 103, likely you're going to be involved in a PEP project. So a little bit of by our numbers, we're pretty exciting for the little program that could. 11 semesters that we've been doing PEP. We've funded 33 local Orange County nonprofits. We try really hard not to repeat funding for 2 years so that we can get a wide variety of folks being funded. We've given over $50,000 to these nonprofits over this time. We're almost to that 600 student mark, so we will go well over the 600 students this semester, this spring. We've had 10 faculty who participated in the program by bringing it into to its class as well. Shockingly, I have not done it yet. Isn't that awful? But it's going to happen. I'm going to get the right course at the right time, and it's going to happen really soon. We're making a commitment for that as well. Okay, so really quickly, a little bit about our research project process. Those of you familiar with Mayerson and NKU, you'll see that this is very similar. We actually have used the same survey that's been used in the Mayerson classes, which has been very intentional. So once we move from sort of our baby research stage to our big research stage, we can actually compare data together. We've also been working with colleagues at Rutgers University who have been doing the same as well. So the idea is hopefully we can eventually move these together. We also have IRB approval to do post-course focus groups to be able to really sort of talk more in depth with students about what they got out of these courses. We have not yet moved to the space where we can talk with faculty and nonprofit leaders in a way that's really intentional about their experiences, but that's definitely on our radar too. So again, because we haven't had the opportunities to do as robust of a study as we wanted to, I wanted to just highlight some real key areas from the past 4 semesters. We're pretty pumped. That's a scientific term, research term, right? We're pretty pumped with some of these numbers. I mean, when you've got multiple things within the 97% students somewhat and strongly agree, 98% about awareness of local Orange County nonprofits, that's something that we're really excited about, that we see that students really are feeling as though what they're learning has made an impact on them, on their belief that they can actually make a difference, and the fact that they should do something about it, that they should have some responsibility, is really important to us as well. So I put some quotes on here. I'm happy to share them with folks too. No act of helping is too small. It's one of my favorites. And this corp helped motivate me to join student government and try to make a change in my community. These are just some quotes from just one semester. If I had more time, there's so many great quotes that I can post on this, but I think you'll see, similar to what you've heard earlier today, that it really does make an impact on these students. And so we're really grateful to be able to be part of this work and to really help grow what's happening in student philanthropy in the classroom, and then also sort of be able to contribute that moving forward in the research side as well. So Mary's Kitchen is a local institution here in Orange. And so we will end here with the picture of this group, which is our second group of PEP students as well. And here's our contact info too, and we're happy to answer questions as we move forward.
Thank you, Whitney, so much.
You're welcome.
It's just very inspiring and interesting to see student philanthropy go out to other universities. You know, of course, we have a place in our heart for the Mayerson Student Philanthropy Project. So, you know, it's you know, just near and dear to our heart. So we like to see that it is being spread, both in terms of your presentation and David's presentation. I'm not going to talk much here. I'll leave some time for discussion, but I will leave one hot tip on terms of the big check, which NKU has shifted to. And this is the staff there. It's a big whiteboard check. So it can be reused. There's usually 2 of them at the ceremony. They can be wiped clean. We can do photographs and use them again and again. I will say one year, the first year, I accidentally used a permanent marker. So I kind of failed that. But, you know, just for anybody out there that's doing a program or thinking about doing it, that's one way to bring back the big check and have it be reusable.
That's great. Good tip.
Okay, Megan. And we're doing great with time. Thank you, guys.
Share. Hopefully that's working. Is it? Okay. All right. I can't find my toolbar to unmute me. Am I unmuted? Okay, there it is. I am unmuted. I had too many screens up. Apologies. Hi, I'm Megan Downing, Associate Professor of Organizational Leadership. And I've been teaching in Mayerson I was trying to figure that out yesterday. I think it's been at least 15 years because I did some adjuncting before I was full-time faculty, and I had the pleasure of working with the Mayerson Project. And I can't imagine teaching without it. To be honest, we were talking about that earlier today. I've also had the pleasure of participating in research from different perspectives, but I'm going to focus today on this particular item that's you see on the screen. The title is a mouthful, so I've got the title here, but I just wanted to make sure to recognize the research team because this was not a solo project. My marvelous co-authors, you've met Kaisa earlier, Kaisa Larson, Joe Nolan, who isn't here today, and of course, Mark Nykirk. And we published this in the journal College Student Retention, but the findings have also been noted in other publications and podcasts. And so I'm really pleased to share the key findings about the Mayerson Project and high impact practices that contribute to student academic success with you today. So you know some basic things, but I have to share this because I don't know how to talk about it without giving these foundational contents, but just a reminder about, key components. The professors, the guide on the side. The students are in direct contact with the community through their work. They're in charge of the grant giving outcome and the decision making. And as Mark would say, the Mayerson Project is designed to amplify what a professor is teaching and to contribute to the students' civic education, specifically to build their understanding of community needs, how nonprofits address those needs, and how students can join in addressing those needs. But in the process, we also really want to support the students' educational process and hopefully keep extend that engagement and facilitate their ability to complete their degree. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So rooted in experiential learning, the Mayerson Project aligns with high impact educational practices. These are institutional practices that are recommended by the Association of American Colleges and Universities that are proven to support student success. And those of you who are familiar with Dr. D. Fink, he did research on these high impact practices to dig down into them and separate them a little bit further, not just the institutional practices, but to identify those that he indicated are specific to teaching, and he refers to them as high impact teaching practices. And you'll see those listed here on this slide. They're active learning strategies that improve learning outcomes, increase student engagement, and support student retention. So by the very nature of the course components, Mayerson Student Philanthropy Project courses align with these high impact teaching strategies. They include both team-based and individual coursework, specifically reflection, an essential component of experiential learning. So it's a big part of our experiential philanthropy component. And in our study, we highlighted a few examples of courses that, infuse these practices to give people some descriptive nature of how they can implement them in this course. And I know because of time limitation, I can't get too detailed, but I want to share a couple of them here for context. So one example of high impact teaching practice is in a 100 level gen ed leadership course that has been taught in multiple modalities, including in high schools and on campus as a dual credit course where students earn both high school and college credit, traditional on campus classes, online asynchronous delivery. And during the pandemic, I was teaching it face to face and flipped it to a synchronous online class. And I have to say that teaching with Emerson during that time when the world was upside down for these students really helped to keep those first-time freshmen engaged in the course. And with a traditional Merison student philanthropy learning by giving approach, the students in this course worked in small groups to research nonprofits with a global reach, explored service and nonprofit work in global cultural contexts, and selected one organization to receive the $2,000 grant. But I want to share a slightly different approach that another professor takes, because in other courses, students engage in service in addition to philanthropy with their Merison classes. Pictured here is a student in Professor Ronnie Chamberlain's costume design course. She's preparing a doll and doll costumes for donation to a local nonprofit. On the next slide, I have a quick glance in that chart of her high impact teaching practices. In the course, the students are polishing their costume design skills. They research local nonprofits, and then they choose a nonprofit to receive the doll donation as well as a monetary grant award from the Merison Student Philanthropy Project Foundation. So this chart shows the robust high impact teaching practices and the student experience from start to finish, costumes from conceptualization to creation. So, and as the faculty who teach with Merison Project know, it has a significant real-time benefit to the students. We see this anecdotally. We see it consistently. We see these benefits in action over the 25 years of the program. But to strengthen those observations, of course, we collect data. And some have already talked a little bit about our pre and post survey. So each semester, we collect this data on perceptions relevant to the Merison Project and students' experiences. They're based on a series of Likert scale questions. They provide quantitative data and open responses that provide rich qualitative data about student perceptions, attitudes, and experiences regarding their service and philanthropy, both before and after they've participated in the program. And at the time of our study, we had 15 years of administering the surveys with two resounding conclusions that have been confirmed over and over again when comparing the pre and post test results. Student answers demonstrated an increase in their awareness of community needs in the region, as well as their awareness of nonprofits. And students also noted an increased interest in service learning. In the post survey, the majority of students said that the Merison project had a positive or very positive impact in practical aspects, such as their interest in the course, the learning of the material, application of information, functional life skills, and a desire to stay in school. So we've seen evidence of the benefits in our classroom, and we see it in these students' responses, all of which are really encouraging. But for our study, we wanted to go a step further. We wanted to compare reported student perceptions with quantitative data for empirical evaluation of the academic outcomes. For example, students indicated that they desired to stay in college and complete a degree, but did the students who enrolled in Merison classes actually do this at a different rate than those who didn't participate in a Merison? And what we learned is that student philanthropy, no surprise, is clearly a student success accelerator. I mean, I have a little bias about it, but it's nice to have the numbers, right? So a bit more about the data analysis. We had 4 years of data, and on our research team, we were really fortunate to work with Dr. Joe Nolan, director of the Burkhart Center, which is NKU's Statistical Consulting Center. And he would tell you that one of the reasons he became excited to work on this research is that the design for the study of graduation rates and retention is quasi-experimental and very sound in comparison to many other educational studies. More importantly, students are blinded during enrollment. So they don't know until they show up for the first day of class that they've enrolled in a Merison course. And this fact eliminates what might otherwise be a large source of potential bias to the analysis. And in examining rates of graduation and retention, what we did was we compared time-specific cohorts of students exiting a Merison course to the corresponding cohort of all students at NKU. So for example, first semester sophomores taking a Merison course were compared to all first semester sophomores. So if I could just quote Joe here, he noted that he was frankly amazed by what we found with graduation rates, that it was astounding, and he thinks that these results are primarily why the student received national interest on the level that it did. And that is that for all cohorts, from freshmen to junior, that the Merison cohorts graduate at a rate that appears to be at least 10 percentage points higher than the university as a whole. In particular, the graduation rate for students taking a Merison course during their sophomore year may be as much as 30 percentage points higher than the overall cohort. And while we recognize that larger sample size are still, sizes are still desirable for better precision, and it's something we definitely plan to revisit over the next few years, these are really robust numbers, very promising numbers, and the study taken as a whole is strongly suggestive of at least 15 to 20 percentage points across the board, which is, I think you can agree, amazing numbers. So in addition, the study also examined retention and completion of credit hours. For retention, there were some noted gains in some cohorts. Again, sample sizes we recognize weren't yet large enough to provide statistical evidence, and something we intend to study in the near future. But for credit hour completion, while the statistical methods for analysis are a little less robust, you can see here that students in Merison cohort had a slightly greater credit hour completion rates in the following 2 semesters compared to the university as a whole. So it's something we're looking forward to continuing to study. Joe summarizes that and I want to use his words so I don't mess it up, but the most conservative estimate for all the cohorts that all sophomores enrolling in Merison courses would have a better than 38% four-year graduation rate, and it could even be higher. For the 39 and 38 students in these cohorts, it was actually 53 and 63% respectively. But again, he emphasizes those are sample numbers and shouldn't be treated as precise population estimates, but still very robust. So I'm going to wrap up here just to summarize that the project is an extraordinary way of teaching, rich with high impact teaching practices just by the nature of the experiential learning and the work that goes into it. And it works in every instance, and it does so at 2 significant levels in teaching stewardship, but also contributing to student success, including all important graduation rates. So that's all from me, and I'll turn it over now to Julie.
Thank you, Megan. I appreciate it. That was great. I am just going to jump right into my presentation based on the time that we have, and hopefully we will have, time for questions at the end. So can you all see this currently? Yep. Okay, great. So in thinking about research that I could present, I was thinking about the audience and what might be of most interest to you. I know we have a few funders, some representatives of foundations here today. So the 2 that I'm going to talk about are long-term effects of experiential philanthropy and then experiential philanthropy in online classes. So I'm just going to dig right in. I have a lot of words on my slides. So if I don't get through them all, if I skip some, I'm happy to share them with you. I can also send the articles to you as well. This one on long-term effects was published in Innovative Higher Education more than 10 years ago. It's kind of this whole COVID time period that we're in. It's kind of shocking that it's been that long ago, but that is where we are. But again, I wanted to share it because it was, I think, the first that looked at long-term impacts, and I haven't seen many others since then. So I think it's important because when people create these programs and when people fund them, a lot of times they're looking at what is going to happen in the long term. I know at NKU, one of the ideas that this would help create a culture of philanthropy in Northern Kentucky, a culture of stewardship. And so that was really the intent of this project. So in terms of research questions, this is kind of, broken up, and I will present this to you, but really the first one is about learning. awareness of social needs and nonprofit organizations. The second one is about their behaviors, and this is for alumni that have graduated from NKU. And then the third is a different way to measure philanthropic behaviors. So I'll start with the sample, actually. This was an interesting process, and I don't know if I would do it again, but I want to thank the Center for Civic Engagement for helping me with this, the Registrar's Office, our advancement office, because we were reaching out to alumni. So first of all, we had to identify Mayerson classes, students who were in that via the Registrar's Office, find them through our advancement office, and then reach out to them. So in the end, we were able to identify 430 alumni, and 127 of them responded. So it was about a 30% response rate, which was pretty good. And in terms of the structure of the survey instrument, I'll just say for the first part, it was what we use in those pre-post surveys. So just kind of duplicated those questions and asked the alumni the same thing 1 to 10 years after their experience. We also had a section, and we'll look at the specific items related to this, but it was more about their community and civic behavior, things like attending city council meetings, writing a letter to the editor, kind of this broader idea of civic engagement. And then we had a set of surveys that asked specifically about their volunteering, donating to charitable organizations, and serving on nonprofit boards. And those items were based on Bureau of Labor Statistics survey items. So this is a big table with a lot of things. I'll just point out that the findings are very similar to what we find in the end of survey or end of semester surveys. Really positive findings in the 90th percentile in terms of their awareness of nonprofit organizations, their awareness of problems and needs in the community. So again, this is the impact of their student philanthropy experience on those levels of awareness. And I kind of have it in order, sort of decreasing impact. Again, in light of time, I'm just going to skip to the next slide, but happy to share this with you later. So these are those broader items related to community and civic engagement. I will say these are actual behaviors. The slide before, was awareness and intentions, intended behavior. So we're asking people who, again, have graduated a year or 10 years ago, to what degree did that philanthropy experience impact your donating money? Again, the higher impacts are at the top, the more positive impacts. So about 2/3 of respondents said that the student philanthropy experience had a positive impact on them, donating money, volunteering, and working with someone or a group to solve problems in their community. It gets less as we go down through the table. One thing I want to point out is number 9 is they're serving on a board of directors for one or more nonprofit organizations. And this number may seem small. It's 25% indicated that their experience had a positive impact. It's relatively small, but it's important. And we'll get to that in another slide or two. In this slide, in fact. So these are the questions that are based on BLS items. And so we asked them, same language, had they contributed financially to at least one nonprofit organization? That's a synopsis of it. 86% of alumni said that during the past 12 months, they had contributed financially. And then we found different data to try to compare that to in terms of the national population. These figures are from IU's Center for Philanthropy. So in the general population, each year, that's about 65 to 70%. So with alumni of philanthropy experiences, that was noticeably higher, 15 to 20 percentage points higher. The second one is actually the second, third are, I think, more noteworthy. We asked these alumni, had they volunteered through or for an organization during the past 12 months? And 71% of philanthropy alumni indicated that they had. Based on that year of BLS data, but this is kind of typical in surveys, is that it's usually about 25 to 30% of Americans in general, adult Americans, volunteer through or for an organization. So in this case, it was noticeably higher, 45 percentage points, and, about 3 times the amount. I will say for those of us who have taught student philanthropy classes or done research, this probably isn't that surprising because we get data, both quantitative and qualitative, that indicate that through their experience, students realize that they can make a difference, that they're one person, but it matters. And so I feel like there is a thread that continues through this in terms of asking alumni about the actual, years later, to what degree it impacted that behavior. And then lastly, we asked how many of them, or asked them if they had served on one nonprofit board during the past 12 months. 15% of philanthropy alumni had. Again, that seems like a relatively small number, but compared to the general population, that's about 3 times. So it seems that, just to answer the question, the big question that I asked at the beginning, does student philanthropy work? And these data and findings seem to indicate that it does matter, that it does help student philanthropists become real philanthropists in their community and region. Okay, I'm going to hit on this even more quickly. This is a more recent study that Megan and I did. It was published in the Journal of Nonprofit Education and Leadership. I'm sharing it with those of you, those faculty that are participating today or who may be watching this later, that think that they can't do it because they teach online classes. And I will say I was in that boat. I was actually in the boat of I never want to teach an online class, 8 years ago. But our program, in response to our students' needs and preferences, started adding more online classes. And when I started to do that, I wanted to continue to incorporate service learning and student philanthropy. So Megan, on the other hand, had done it for a long time. So we decided it would be a good opportunity to get together. And we approached this as a service learning activity. So there's very little research on what we called it e-student philanthropy, but there's quite a bit of literature on e-service learning. So we borrowed from that literature in terms of how we would, the types of research questions in our approach. I will say the term that we use is extreme student philanthropy, which is based on the literature. That could mean all kinds of things, but what it means is that both components are done online, both the instruction and the philanthropy portion are done online. So we're asking questions, typical questions, that are asked with these studies, but again, for online students. To what degree did it impact their learning, their awareness of problems, and, their interest in trying to make a difference in the world? Here's a theoretical framework I'll say that we based it on. I just want to point out this is service learning. It tends to look at these approaches in silos in terms of students as learners, students as community members, students as social activists. In our article, we took a more dynamic approach to that based on our own experiences, in that oftentimes when I'm teaching a class, it's not just one approach that I'm taking, but multiple types of approaches, especially depending on the class that I'm teaching. So anyhow, I'll leave it at that. But again, there's more in the journal article if you're interested in it. But I will say I was particularly happy with this contribution in terms of our article. So for our data, it was one of my classes, Leading in Diverse Public Environments, 18 students. Megan had 3 sections of teamwork and organizations from various semesters. And we actually had a control group because Megan had an in-person class that did student philanthropy as well. So I will just hit the highlights here, showing a few tables. We looked at comparisons, undergraduate students to graduate students, but I feel like what's most interesting to people that are participating in this webinar is online and face-to-face. And frankly, just the column itself of relatively high numbers. So just to mention this, this is a 5-point scale, so 1 to 5, with 5 being very positive. So for students that were participating in e-student philanthropy, on these learning measures, it was tended to be positive or very positive. And in addition, I'll point out that they weren't statistically different or significantly different in terms of online and face-to-face. So that's an encouraging thing, and that we can do this in an online format like we do in a face-to-face format and have similar outcomes. But just looking at the numbers, they were, while they're not statistically significant, they are, appear to be relatively higher. Students as community members, again, on a scale of 1 to 5. So these are relatively high in terms of their awareness of nonprofit organizations, especially in needs in their community. Again, no significant difference between online and face-to-face. These measures as students as activists. So this is them taking action, sparking action, trying to make a difference in the world. Also relatively high, maybe not as high as the previous two tables, but relatively high, and no significant difference between online and face-to-face. And I pulled some qualitative data too. I know I'm at my stopping point, but I will say just to wrap this up, I wasn't sure how I would do personally as a faculty member teaching student philanthropy in an online class. It worked out really well. And I'm happy to have participated in this study to kind of look at it a little bit bigger picture. Maybe we need to do it again, Megan, with even more online classes to see where we are now. But the data was from 2017, 2018. So of course, we've seen online classes kind of blow up since then. So I'm sure there is a lot more data available.